So first is how war affects us directly, and that's very obvious that like children grow up with parents, or actually the lack of parents because their parents go off to the military, and also if you're a veteran yourself, you're also directly affected by this. My dad is a Vietnam veteran, and he was affected by war in many ways, not just psychologically, but physically too, because my dad, he has post-traumatic stress syndrome, and it's so severe to the point where like he can't take a picture with flash because the flash scares him, and also he has to be always facing the door because, you know, with your back behind the door, you're vulnerable to attack. So it's just little things like that that he constantly has to deal with. And it's just kind of crazy too that we send like our children out into this environment that we really don't know anything about and tell them to do something there, killing people, and then they come back and they have all these mental issues, and then we don't help them get jobs and all this other stuff. So it's kind of just like, well, really, what is the point of war? Is it to protect our people, or is it something else? And then another way war affects us is financially. Obviously, there's a lot of budget cuts in education, and I think my research said that just in efforts for the Pentagon, all the money we spend comes around like $360 billion, and that's just for that cause. And that's quite frankly a lot of money that we could be using for other things. And then psychological, and this is like the most important one and the one that I found most fascinating, and that's because I learned about this thing called psychological operations, and what that is the military. Basically, their motive is to influence their enemy by figuring out their weaknesses in order to influence their decision making, influence their beliefs about anything really, and including war. So one way that this affects us, and this is important especially because we're supporting war without even really realizing it, and that's through our fear and through our distractions. Fear. So for the example I'm going to use, it's going to be 9/11, and that's something that's very heart-wrenching to all of us. We were all affected by this personally, and it's because the love of our country, and we feel a sense of pride, and it was really terrible seeing all these people die that way. But, and the interesting thing is the media put 9/11 on the news for at least like 2 weeks or something like that. It was a month worth of coverage from every aspect, and all these things came up about how it's a conspiracy and all this different stuff. But that same year in 2001, okay, well, 9/11, the total amount of people that died were 3,000. But in 2001, the same amount of the amount of people that died from drunk driving was 400,000. So what this proves doesn't show that that 9/11 isn't important. It is. It just shows how the media can manipulate us to show that one issue is more important than another. So 9/11 is a perfect example because now we're stuck in a 13-year world that hasn't ended. And if it was beneficial financially, we should have seen something happen by now. So the last little part I'm going to talk about for war is our distractions. And very simply, how many of you would agree you're kind of attached to your phone? Yeah. Okay, and a lot of our leisure activity is going on the internet and watching TV, watching movies. And all this is also a war tactic because it allows us to focus on one thing, and we find value in all these things we're watching and seeing and hearing around us in the media, and we're not paying attention to the real issues. And so one way the media does this is, like, for example, Black Friday. We see people lining up for Target for all around the block, but we don't see that same amount of effort for world hunger, which is something we know to this day we are capable of solving. So that's just something to think about. You know, the psychological operations isn't approved. There's no like evidence out there for it. It's just my personal opinion of what's happening. And I think I provided evidence in the examples I gave out of like how that could be misconstrued as true. And so our environment. That's another global issue because we need our planet to survive. Without our planet, we have nothing. And so like you said earlier about water pollution, air pollution, habitat loss, all these things contribute to our life, and it's because of the food we eat, the stuff we put in our body, and how animals interact with us. And like you said, like plastic goes from one animal and continues on to the food chain, and it's not something we can escape. So I actually do just have my environmental issue card. So another thing to think about too in the environment besides pollution is global warming. And global warming is important because it creates more carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. And to be completely blunt and to the point, with too much carbon dioxide in our bodies and too much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, like the ozone layer depletions, and then we pretty much die. Like that's like a true fact, and it's kind of weird that these things continue to happen, and the worst case scenario is death, and yet these issues still continue to be ignored, and nothing really seems to be taking place to fix it when we have all these resources and technologies available to do that. And so the last thing I'm going to talk about today is the bystander effect. Because like I just mentioned, there's a lot of things we can do to fix it, but the thing that is important to realize is we don't need to rely on politicians, environmental scientists, or other medical scientists to fix our problems. What we really can do is see how we can fix this problem ourselves. And that's one of the reasons why I decided to come here today, is because like I feel a lot of people don't talk about issues like this on a regular basis, and like it's important to at least make an effort to do something rather than do nothing. And I'm going to talk about this lady. Her name is Katie Genovese, I think. And on March 13th, 1964, she was raped, stabbed, and robbed in the middle of a New York neighborhood. 38 people witnessed her death, and no one did anything about it because everyone assumed that someone else would take care of the problem, and someone else would call the emergency paramedics and to assist her. But she cried for help, and no one came to her rescue. So what this shows is that the bystander effect is a global issue, because when there's a bigger group of people, we take less responsibility for the issues at hand, and we think that other people are going to take responsibility for us. So, and that's really terrible, because really the only thing we can control is ourselves and not other people. So, I guess to conclude with the bystander effect, it just shows that, Albert Einstein once said that the real evil in the world is not doing anything, not the people doing the evil. And I think that's really true, because our generation can be the change, but if we rely on other people to make the change for us, it's just going to continue to be the same. So thank you.